The Vikings here for White Well-Being. Episode 7, Gods of the North. Hello everyone, Hans here. I hope all of you are faring well. Episode 7 shall be about several of the Norse deities. As always, bear in mind that for a better comprehension, it is vital that you do your own spiritual or intellectual research. Beware anyone that calls him or herself an absolute authority on this matter. So hereby you are invited to better understand the Norse deities and their importance with Hans's perception attached to it. I shall however do my best to be as unintrusive as possible. In the 21st century, the common way to look at the spiritual is from an organized religious system with strict hierarchies, social rules and doctrine taught in schools. However, was it so for our ancestors, living close to nature in an environment that was rural rather than urban when one dealt with the harsh realities of the surrounding world, or was overcome by such realities? Would our ancestors have prayed to the deities, knowing full well that one either does the hard work to survive and thrive, or merely hope that after plenty of kneeling, a god puts a stop to winter and refills the granary with a snap of a finger? Had it been the latter, we would have never heard of Vikings, one may fairly surmise. To emphasize, for all the wonders nature has within it, there was hardship. Famines, floods, avalanches, long winters. Their lives were tied to the seasonal cycle, the lay of the land, the whims of the ocean. Like any time, there must have been stress, suffering, disease, or general discomfort. Things that give philosophers something to mull about. Situations and environments that harden or wizen people or cut their lives short very swiftly. Add to this that capital M man has to deal with other man too. One needed to be very capable to live a long and successful life. Such people grew to have respect for nature as the external wilds, but also the internal nature of man. Here is where the deities of the North come in. To make stories around the fire palatable about the workings of nature and man, figures of importance were added to represent these forces, to teach and to inspire. So let us look to the deity Thor, whose very name sounds like thunder when pronounced right. What if there was such a man that was remembered from ages past for mighty deeds achieved? And later on, storytellers gave him a hammer that would come back to his hand if he hurled it somewhere, and a chariot pulled by 2 goats. As man, he represents the strong man, the working man, a father, a husband, and also a protector, even though he is a little bit ill-tempered and he tends to be rather on the rash side. As a force of nature, his association is with thunder, magnetism, and indomitable energy. Someone inspired by Thor may emulate him, not mimic, and become physically impressive, a masculine caretaker, a family man, all by personal choice, and still able to maintain one's own identity. Thor was well beloved among the farming communities for what he inspired in young boys. In that brief example with Thor, we then can comprehend how Scandinavian, as well as other native white spirituality across Europe in all its forms, revolves around interacting with and contemplating about external nature and internal self. So rather than faith or belief, it is about facing reality and personal growth. I would encourage you now to pause the video, perhaps go sit in the green and give this some thought, because this is very crucial to understand, in my opinion. If you are ready to continue, let's go for it. I want to spare a moment and a breath to address these males and females who display themselves as spiritual and thought leaders, trying to impress listeners by invoking powerful words such as druid, Cody, Oakwise, Rekia, Saint Mother, etc. In the past, there were those who might have earned themselves such names by merit of their benevolent deeds and helpful knowledge. People sought out for their wisdom. On this, I wish to share a warning. Today, in the 21st century, Charlemagne has still plenty of disciples who will happily trick others and you into believing that they care about our people, and that they care about our history, care about the spirituality of our ancestors, and that might just make it our own as well. So when you listen to another, do it responsibly, and always retain your independence of thought, and also independence of action. Always ask questions, not only for inquiry, but to test those who bestow themselves such titles or general impression. Any conformity demanded or presented as a poisonous gift comes from the mouths of the Ormtung. That translates to the worm tongue. Basically, the liars. So before you seek to band and bond with others, you had best be wise and worked on your personal strengths and made yourself aware of your personal vulnerabilities. Armor your Achilles heel. Sharpen your mind and perception to dispel the illusions that such worm tongues will cast. In short, beware the charlatans and their minions. And remember that worthy people come only to those who are worthy themselves. Birds of a feather. So let us proceed with the deities. Thor, of course, is mentioned. He who is a member of one of the Scandinavian godly families. There are the Aesir and the Vanir. However, there are also elves and dwarfs, going by the names Alfar and Svartalfar. Then there are the Jotun giants, the Turs giants, and Muspel giants. That would come down to the Eaters, and the Turs giants tend to be associated with frost, as whereas the Muspel giants are associated with fire. I cannot go over all the deities in one episode, so I propose the next. I'll list 2 members of each family and 1 from the other groups. Any requests are always welcome if you want me to address a particular figure sooner rather than later. Very well then, the Aesir family. Knowing that many must be at the edge of their seat, awaiting, yes, I'll start with Odin. He is known also as the hanging god, the wandering Seder magician, he that went through death to pick up the runes that he shared with his people, Seder by the way being a form of magic, and the word rune translates to knowledge or secret, and comes in the shape of letters. There is a runic alphabet. Odin is also seen as the Allfather. A word of caution, perhaps real quick, is that the anti-whites will twist this to their narrative. They will enact in mythical white erasure and claim Odin fathered all races, as that title is twisted into if you let them. A figure that acts as an imaginary surrogate parent rather than an example of responsibility towards one's tribe. The one whose knowledge is worth heeding. In the stories, he also collects half of all the worthy men that fall in strife. The other half goes to the goddess Frigga. As a man, he is adventurous, lordly, confronting, self-confronting, and also curious, a trickster, and he is also a little bit melancholic. He is one-eyed, indicating, according to the philosophers, that his mind is illuminated and that he has struggled. His sacrificed eye is in the well of knowledge, ever open and observing. As a force of nature, he is associated with animals like his steed Sleipnir, the ravens Hugin and Munin, his hounds, and the magical energies of creation, and Western mysticism in regards to sacrifice, the runes again, and also transformation of the capital S self. He is driven by the will to survive the current age and proceed into the next one. The second Aesir deity, Frigga, a deity that is somewhat oddly less well known. Frigga, who often goes mentioned as Odin's wife, or one of them, depending on how you wish to look at it. There is plenty of confusion about her, since she often is called Freya. However, Frigg, from what I can tell, is a separate deity, a separate goddess. Frigg is associated with foreseeing what may yet be. Through wisdom and pattern recognition, one can see plenty of that which may be. She is keymaster of her own hall, Folkvanger, a name that translates to catcher of the folk or catcher of the people. Her own name may translate to beloved one. Who'd have thunk white men love their women? She is a woman of respect and responsibility, a chieftain in her own right. She is a mother, protective, but also can be overprotective. So as capital M man, she represents a matriarchic role that cooperates with the man, her domain being the household, an all-mother if you will. Never once does her strength come from physicality. Instead, it hails from her sharp intelligence, wisdom, and social connections. Rooted in her motherly capacities, she is the true strong woman. A strength that she extends beyond the protection of only her children, but indeed the entire tribe. As a force of nature, there is little I can add to her, aside perhaps the energies of man's interactions being observed and steered. One can only imagine the handful that Thor must have been for her. The Vanir. Let us look to Invi Frey, the one the Yngling dynasty claims its heritage from, mentioned in episode 6. There is some doubt whether Invi Frey is one or two deities. Assuming though that it is one deity, the name translates to Lord Yng, or chieftain of the Ingevons, the Ingevons being a tribe. A personal take of Hans is that Freyr may come close to the words free, or in one of the Germanic languages, or several of them I should say, the word vrijer, which translates to lover, or even one who makes love. After all, he is associated with masculine fertility, so it might make sense to bear that in mind. Depicted often as wielding a sword, which is a weapon but also status symbol, his totem is the boar. Even today, many statues of him depict him with his manhood at attention. Something to be proud of, to have a hale constitution and a man's virility. Our ancestors accepted the anatomy of men and women free from being shamed into thinking anything but the positives of it. So, as a man, he represents fiery energy of a youth, masculine health of the body, lordliness, although a different type than Odin's, and a certain robustness of a fresh warrior perhaps. And of course, the unbridled ability to procreate. As a force of nature, he definitely embodies the masculine half of nature to be complemented by his twin sister Freya, which is of course the feminine side of nature. It would be easy for me to conclude that Freya is the feminine side of Freyr and call it an episode. However, I will instead explore her some more. She is that side to her twin, complemented by the masculine, however never depicted as a mother, rather as a maiden at arms, perhaps a bit like Éowyn in Lord of the Rings, a shield maiden if you will. Her totem is the cat, but since she also has a chariot and house cats give you toxoplasmosis and are a little bit too small to pull chariots, let us say that these are two saber cats or cave lions. That's a lot more impressive all of a sudden, isn't it? Her name translates to female lord, so today that would be lady with reverence. Her name, as Hans sees it, may be the feminine counterpart of lover, or one that makes love. Maybe even the Germanic Frau may come from her name, which means woman. Anti-whites have grasped this twinship and twisted it, of course, in an attempt for mythic white erasure, insisting that there is an incestuous relation between the twins. However, incestuous actions have consequences that have anti-fertile results. Unhealthy results come from such practices, the opposite of what these deities represent. The twinship symbolizes the two halves of man and woman coming together to form the greater whole as such. Freyr and Freya are still common names in the Netherlands and Belgium today. Alright, one more, and I think that'll suffice enough for now. Jotun, as I mentioned earlier, translates to eater, or even man-eater. Ymir, the giant according to the writing in the poetic Eddas from which Earth was made. Living in Ginnungagap, born from space one could say. Hinting perhaps that our ancestors had astro-awareness. They comprehended that there was space beyond Earth. Ymir is a force that represents the unpredictable events that befall man. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, but also the mood changes within man. Emotional turbulences caused by external influences or unyielding temper from within. It is only when Odin and his two brothers intervene that Earth is allowed to bloom. Ymir translates to as much as shouter or tempestuous one, although the translations could be a little bit off. At this point in time, most are still trying to figure it out. The lesson out of this character that one may garner is that man can always overcome. And with that, I'm going to conclude episode 7. I thank you for your attention and time. Remember that the gods are as real as you and me, and may you bring them to your side. Bye bye.